Welcome to Imran Star Video, or as we call it, ISVi, the collaborative lens on Vancouver, unfiltered, unscripted, and powered by community. We're not just a voice behind the mic, we're a collective of creators, thinkers, storytellers, and city lovers coming together to spotlight the people, places, and energy that make Vancouver what it is. From coast mountain skylines to neon-lit backstreets, we're covering everything from downtown buzz to the untold stories shaping our scene. You'll find us exclusively on YouTube, no algorithms, no filters, just real talk. For behind the scenes, updates, and chaotic brilliance in real time, follow us on TikTok and Instagram. So hit subscribe, drop a comment, and help us grow from 100 to 10, 0, and beyond, because this isn't just our platform, it's yours too. Turn it up, get into it. Let's talk Vancouver. This is ISV. Let's be honest, when people think of Vancouver, the first things that usually come to mind are overpriced condos, passive-aggressive bikers, and enough rain to make your seasonal depression feel seasonal and personal. But while the city's reputation may be dominated by yoga studios and 9 lattes, there's another side to Vancouver that doesn't get nearly enough credit: the indie music scene. And no, we're not talking about Spotify's chill Canadian indie playlist that thinks every band lives in Toronto and sounds like Bon Iver had a nap. Vancouver's indie scene is where actual magic happens. Gritty, unpredictable, charmingly underfunded magic. It's DIY shows in dusty basements with questionable lighting, bands recording tracks in their kitchens because rent ate the studio budget, and musicians juggling day jobs, side hustles, and their own merch tables like chaotic, caffeinated superheroes. It's raw, loud, beautifully weird, and it's been holding this city's artistic pulse long before TikTok declared lo-fi surf grunge a micro-genre. And sure, the West Coast chill vibe is still there, but it's wearing Doc Martens, playing a reverb-drenched Stratocaster, and quietly spiraling about late capitalism through lyrics. This isn't just a music scene, it's an ecosystem of art kids, burnout creatives, ex-theater majors, and guitarists who swear they're finally releasing something this year. It's the sound of a city that refuses to be boxed in by its real estate market or its weather forecast. In this exploration, we're diving headfirst into the heart of Vancouver's indie underworld, where bands rise, fall, and sometimes headline Tuesday nights at the Ballroom. We'll look at how the scene came to be, who's shaping it now, and why it might just be the most authentically Vancouver thing this city has to offer. So grab your tote bag, charge your AirPods, and prepare to fall in love with the part of the city that doesn't get listed on real estate brochures, but probably should. Before Vancouver was known for 4 million teardown houses and cinematic drone shots of Stanley Park, it had something way cooler and significantly cheaper: a gnarly, sweaty, wonderfully unhinged music scene. We're talking garage floors as stages, DIY punk shows in living rooms, and bands that had more attitude than guitar strings. This city's indie cred didn't just show up, it kicked down the door, wearing ripped jeans and blasting feedback. It all starts in the 1970s and 80s when Vancouver's punk scene came out swinging like it had a personal vendetta against silence. Bands like DOA weren't just making noise, they were inventing it. Frontman Joey Shithead and his band basically pioneered hardcore punk, and also pioneered the art of naming yourself like a cartoon villain with a cause. These early bands didn't care about mainstream appeal, they cared about energy, truth, and surviving a dive bar set without getting electrocuted. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and Vancouver starts evolving its sound like a Pokemon with anxiety. Enter the new pornographers' indie rock royalty, whose harmonies were as tight as your landlord's deposit policy. Their melodic chaos helped put Vancouver on the indie map internationally, proving we could do dreamy, cerebral bangers and still rock plaid. Around the same time, Japandroid showed up with their fuzzy guitar heroics and scream cry in the rain energy, cementing Vancouver's reputation for emotionally charged chaos with distortion pedals. Let's not forget Peach Pit's Sad Boy Surf Pop, which came in later like a sigh you can dance to. They emerged during the era when indie bands stopped being afraid of feelings and leaned fully into them. Peach Pit was, and still is, that guy at the party who's both fun and kind of always in a breakup, and Vancouver said, "Yeah, that's our vibe." Through it all, what defined Vancouver's indie scene wasn't one genre, it was a feeling. A little broke, a little bruised, but loud, real, and absolutely refusing to be ignored. Whether it was punk rage, lo-fi melancholy, or fuzzy alt-pop, the scene thrived on DIY ethos, mutual support, and the occasional existential crisis screamed into a mic. In short, Vancouver's indie history is the story of artists building something loud and honest in a city that often pretends to be chill. And if the past tells us anything, it's that Vancouver's best music has always come from the margins, the basements, the fringes, the kids who couldn't afford studio time but had a lot to say anyway. Every indie scene needs its sacred spaces, those dimly lit, questionably ventilated venues where dreams are born, amps are blown, and at least one guy is selling zines from his backpack. In Vancouver, these venues are less Rolling Stone centerfold and more cramped room with Christmas lights and a stage held together by duct tape and raw ambition. And honestly, that's exactly the point. Let's start with the crown jewel, the Commodore Ballroom. Yeah, it's fancy by indie standards. It has actual acoustics, a bouncer who doesn't hate you, and a floor that springs. But before you roll your eyes at its polished reputation, remember this. Every local band dreams of making it to the Commodore. It's the sweet spot between we made it and we still do our own sound check. The legends have played here. The legends in training still queue outside in the rain, pretending not to care that they've waited all year to open for a touring act from Toronto. On the grimmier, grungier end of the vibe spectrum is the Rickshaw Theatre, a space that looks like it has definitely hosted at least 3 post-apocalyptic punk shows and 1 cursed seance. Originally a movie theater, it now thrives as a shrine to loud music, mosh pits, and unpredictable bathroom graffiti. If your band plays the Rickshaw, it means you're too loud for cafe sets and too good to be ignored. Next up, the Biltmore Cabaret, the place where indie bands go to find their cool factor, lose it in a fog machine, and accidentally gain cult followings. This is the venue that gives "we're all in this together" energy. The carpet's old, the lighting is moody, and the crowd always feels like they've been your fan since day one, even if they just Shazammed your entire set. But we can't talk about Vancouver's indie scene without giving flowers, and maybe a band-aid, to the DIY underground circuit. These are the East Van warehouse shows, backyard gigs, and basement venues, with names like the Dumpster Kingdom or House of Tofu. They're unlicensed, unbothered, and unapologetically community-driven. If you know, you know. And if you don't, you probably weren't invited respectfully. These off-the-grid venues are the lifeblood of the local scene. They're where bands test new sounds, break up mid-set, get back together during the encore, and sell cassettes from milk crates. There are no velvet ropes, no VIPs, and absolutely no pretension, just music, sweat, and the vague scent of thrifted leather. The stakes are low, the volume is high, and the vibe is art school kid meets skate punk meets the ghost of your ex. And of course, no list would be complete without Fortune Sound Club, which, while known for hip-hop and club nights, has carved out a respectable niche for genre-bending indie acts, alt-R, B-stars, and electronic weirdos who don't fit neatly on Spotify playlists. If you're playing Fortune, you've got range, and probably a well-designed Instagram grid. In Vancouver, these venues are more than just buildings with sound systems. They're gathering spaces, sanctuaries for introverts with extrovert stage presence. They're where scenes are born, bands are built, and someone inevitably says, "This is giving early Arcade Fire energy." And that's exactly why they matter. So what does Vancouver's indie music scene sound like? Well, imagine if a foggy forest, a queer zine, and a thrift store in Mount Pleasant all formed a band together. That's the vibe. This city's indie scene doesn't follow trends. It sneaks off to a garage in East Van, duct tapes a mic stand, and invents a new subgenre with nothing but vibes and a borrowed amp. If you're looking for a tidy genre label like indie pop or garage rock, good luck. Vancouver's indie scene is proudly messy, genre fluid, and emotionally available. You'll find dream pop duos opening for punk screamers, lo-fi surf rockers, sliding into psychedelic folk collabs, and synth-driven queer ballads being performed in the same set as spoken word screamo. Confused? Good. That's how you know it's real. This isn't just music, it's feeling. Vancouver indie bands have mastered the art of making you cry in a cool way. They sound like breakups you haven't had yet, existential dread with reverb, or a nostalgic trip down Commercial Drive on a foggy Tuesday. There's a sort of coastal sadness baked into everything, even when the beat slaps. Call it melancholy with good lighting, it's heartbreak, but make it West Coast. But don't get it twisted, it's not all sad boy guitar strumming and retro synths. There's grit, joy, and full chaos too. From feminist punk bands that scream like your intrusive thoughts, to indigenous hip-hop collectives mixing beats with land-back bars, Vancouver's indie sound is a genre-breaking free-for-all, where identity and sound smash together and make something weirdly beautiful. And speaking of identity, this scene is loud about it. It's queer, decolonial, neurodivergent, and unbothered by the mainstream's need to label and profit. Artists here aren't trying to fit into Spotify algorithms. They're making music because it needs to be made sometimes in a bedroom, sometimes on the floor of a cafe that also sells crystals and vintage VHS tapes. Vancouver indie also thrives in the in-between. The rainy season that never ends. The spaces between rent hikes and heartbreak. It's hyper-local and deeply personal, but still manages to speak to anyone who's ever cried into a poutine box at 2 a.m. or wondered why all their friends suddenly moved to Montreal. So, what makes Vancouver indie different? It's not just about sound, it's about scene. It's about energy. It's about making art in a city that's constantly threatening to price you out of it, and still saying, nah, we'll play anyway covers 10, bring your own cup. Let's be real. Half the fun of being into indie music is the superior feeling of telling your friends, oh yeah, I saw them before they blew up. Vancouver's indie scene is a goldmine of I was there when energy. And if you don't start paying attention now, someone else is going to get the bragging rights first. So here's your starter pack. 10 local bands and artists that you should absolutely pretend you've known about for years. But it's okay if you just found them on this list. You've probably heard them on a playlist called something like Indie Sadness in a Flannel, and for good reason. Peach Pit is Vancouver's indie golden child, catchy, melancholic, and somehow always sounding like a beach day with emotional baggage. Their sound is jangly guitars, plus deadpan vocals, plus accidental existentialism, and honestly, that's the Vancouver brand. Formerly known as JPN SGRLS, don't ask, Hotel Mira, delivers high-energy alt-pop rock that makes you want to sprint through an emotionally pivotal movie montage. Lead singer Charlie Kerr brings that sad theater kid with eyeliner charisma, and their live shows feel like a caffeine overdose in the best possible way. Devours is the synth-pop alien overlord we deserve. Imagine if Robin had a dystopian younger brother who journaled about queer heartbreak and then turned it into a dance floor breakdown that's Devours. It's glitchy, it's raw, it's sweaty, it's brilliant. Also, they perform in a chainmail crop top sometimes. And if that doesn't scream icon, what does? Yes, the name is as cool as the band. Babe Corner crafts moody, melancholic rock with just enough shimmer to make you feel like you're in a 24 film about longing and vintage thrift stores. Think surfy guitars, silky vocals, and just the right amount of retro cool detachment. Do you like your music noisy, chaotic, and capable of shaking loose unresolved childhood angst? Good meet Kamikaze Nurse. This art punk noise rock collective sounds like a power drill fighting a ghost inside a haunted house full of feelings. It's loud, it's weird, and it totally slaps. Okay? Not technically indie rock, but absolutely part of the independent music ecosystem and completely essential to the Vancouver soundscape. This Haisla Nation duo blends blistering hip-hop, land-back politics, and absolute mic domination. They're what happens when tradition meets trap, and they're not here to be background noise. Need some R&B with lo-fi production and vocals that feel like your crush just texted back? Daisy is here. She's making smooth, genre-blending music that lives somewhere between chillwave and sad girl at a rooftop party. It's dreamy, it's vibey, and absolutely worth keeping an eye and ear on. Haley's the friend who brings a guitar to your picnic and then casually breaks your heart in a 4-minute song. Folk pop with teeth and unfiltered lyrics that read like the Notes app confessionals of a theater kid raised on Tumblr. Vulnerable, witty, and low-key devastating. Post-punk revival is so back, and Actors is leading the charge. Think darkwave synths, driving bass lines, and the perfect soundtrack for stalking the city in slow motion wearing sunglasses at night. They're moody, cinematic, and extremely playlist core. Walgren is what happens when classical violin training collides with mythic, genre-defying art pop. Haunting vocals, layered strings, and vibes that range from fairy queen to electro sorceress. Perfect for when you want your music to feel like it's casting a spell on your nervous system. Each of these artists represents a different side of the Vancouver indie prism, from sweaty basements to neon-soaked synth sets. They're pushing boundaries, creating space, and making music that hits harder than a rainy Tuesday on Commercial Drive. So go ahead, put them in your rotation, hit up their next live show, and get ready to be that person who says, I knew them before they went viral. Let's not sugarcoat it. Being in an indie band in Vancouver is basically like trying to keep a houseplant alive in a closet, technically possible, but only if you cry into it for moisture. This city isn't just expensive, it's aggressively, soul-drainingly expensive. And for emerging artists trying to survive off cover gigs, merch sales, and Bandcamp Fridays, Vancouver's cost of living feels like the villain in a YA dystopian novel. First up, rehearsal space. Or, more accurately, the lack of it. Unless your bassist uncle owns a warehouse, which, let's be real, he doesn't, your band is probably practicing in a closet-sized room with cracked drywall, one working outlet, and rent equivalent to a medium-tier Airbnb. Some artists are now rehearsing in storage lockers, parkade corners, or their childhood bedrooms, which, yes, adds character, but also makes soundproofing a group trauma. Then there's the venue crisis. Every time a beloved local stage disappears, a condo development mysteriously rises in its place, like a sad game of whack-a-mole, but with less music and more Instagrammable lobby furniture. Iconic indie venues have been bulldozed, evicted, or buried under zoning drama, leaving artists with two choices: rent a sketchy East Van warehouse under the table, or try their luck playing at a microbrewery run by someone named Chad, who thinks ska is still cool. And don't even get us started on the all-ages scene. Remember being 17 and getting turned away from a show because your ID said high school student instead of existential burnout? Yeah, still happening. Vancouver's lack of all ages, sober-friendly venues means younger fans, and emerging artists are often shut out entirely unless they're willing to perform in a community-centered gym next to a badminton tournament. Oh, and let's talk burnout. The indie grind here is real. Artists juggle day jobs, night gigs, side hustles, and whatever's left of their mental health. They design their own album art, run their own social media, manage their own bookings, and still somehow get asked to play for exposure. Reminder, you can't pay rent, with exposure, unless your landlord is an influencer. Even post-pandemic, recovery for the art scene has been rocky. Funding is inconsistent, grant access is confusing, and a lot of support goes to established institutions instead of grassroots creators. Basically, unless you've already opened for Arcade Fire or teach yoga to grant committee members, good luck. Yet somehow, despite all this chaos, Vancouver's indie scene survives because the people in it are powered by stubbornness, passion, and probably 3-day-old pizza. It's loud, it's scrappy, and it refuses to go quietly. Let's be clear. Everyone loves to say they support the arts until it's time to leave the house, spend 12, or stand in a crowd where someone might spill craft beer on your vintage denim. But if you want Vancouver's indie scene to thrive and not just survive off chaotic passion and instant noodles, you've got to do more than vibe from a distance. First things first, show up. No, seriously, get off your couch, put on a band tee that isn't ironic, and go to the show. Even if it's a Tuesday, even if it's raining, it is. Even if you don't really know the band. Guess what? That's how you get to know them. Bonus. The 10 you spend on cover actually goes further than your last 5 Starbucks points combined. Second, buy the merch. That hand-printed shirt your friend made in their basement? It funds their next EP and tells everyone at brunch that you have impeccable taste. That zine the drummer made between shifts at their serving job? That's art. Support it like you'd support your favorite overpriced oat milk brand. Next up, stream, but also download. We love a Spotify playlist moment, but let's not pretend the algorithm is paying anyone's rent. If you really want to support local artists, buy their music on Bandcamp, toss them a tip on Ko-fi, or Radical Ideas share their stuff on socials without expecting a follow back. And if you're really about it, volunteer. Join a street team, help with door at DIY shows, design flyers, bring snacks, offer your weird skills, looking at you, amateur lighting techs, and spreadsheet lovers. The indie scene is built on people who say, yeah, I can help, and then somehow end up managing a venue. Also, don't be weird. Respect the space. Respect the artists. Don't film their entire set with your flashlight on. Don't scream requests if you don't know the lyrics. Don't treat every band member like they're on retainer to fix your breakup. Just be cool, Brenda. And finally, spread the word. Tell your friends, drag your roommates. Post about the band that made you feel things even though you swore you were emotionally unavailable. Because in a city like Vancouver, word of mouth can hit harder than a label deal. So if you want to be more than just a passive participant in Vancouver's indie renaissance, support like it's your side hustle, show up, spend a little, scream respectfully, and keep the scene weird, alive, and wonderfully loud. If you've made it this far, congrats, you officially know more about Vancouver's indie music scene than your average dude named Chad, who still thinks indie means Vampire Weekend and a vinyl collection he bought for aesthetic. But more importantly, you now understand that this city's music scene isn't just alive, it's evolving, emotional, and grinding harder than a barista during brunch rush. Vancouver's indie scene is the soundtrack of becoming. It's the quiet resistance in a city obsessed with real estate stats. It's the late night synth set that makes you forget your rent is due. It's the group of 20-somethings in a basement gig screaming their feelings into a mic because therapy's expensive. It's not always polished, not always perfect, but it's real, and it hits deeper than anything playing on a top 40 loop. This scene isn't just about the music. It's about claiming space in a city that often acts like it has none. It's about building something from scratch, supporting each other, and staying loud even when the developers are louder. And it's about identity queer, racialized, neurodivergent, unfiltered identity, turning up the volume and daring the city to listen. So, no, Vancouver may never be the first place people name when they list off music capitals. But honestly, that's what makes it special. This isn't a polished playlist, it's a voice memo at 2 a.m. that accidentally becomes your favorite song. If you want to feel the pulse of this city, don't just look at the skyline. Follow the noise the basement shows, the neon-lit venues, the cassette releases on Instagram stories. That's where the soul is. Vancouver's indie scene isn't waiting for anyone's permission, and if you're lucky enough to be part of it, even just as a fan in the crowd, then welcome. You're part of the story too. Now get out there, find your new favorite band, and scream your lungs out in a room where no one's trying to be famous. They're just trying to be heard. And just like that, the city's pulse slows, but the story doesn't stop. You've been watching ISVi Imran Star Video, where voices come together and the city speaks back. We're a crew, not a single face, a movement, not a moment. And every episode, that's built with you, for you, by all of us. From the seawall to the skyline, from underground voices to rooftop vibes, we're telling the stories that don't make the news, but make the neighborhood. If this episode hit, pass it on. Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on TikTok and Instagram. Drop a comment and tell us what your Vancouver sounds like. We're building this together clip by clip, story by story. From 100 to 10K to wherever this takes us when we get there, we all show up. So until the next drop, stay loud, stay collective, and stay in it. This is ISVi signing off.